Hi, and welcome to the Examine Life. And today, I wanted to talk to you about this video is going to be a follow up to another video I did about therapy, narcissistic therapists, by the way. And I gave an example of one incident that I had with what I consider to be a narcissistic therapist. Now, I want to make something very clear in that. My background in all of this particular topic is that I had done therapy for many years, decades, as a matter of fact. And I also had looked into becoming a therapist because a lot of people consider that after they've been in therapy for a long time, right? But I decided not to because as I got a closer look at it, and in retrospect, in relation to all of the therapists that I've dealt with over my lifetime, I started to see some things that were blatantly just counterproductive. And then when I look back on all the years that I was in therapy, I have to say, did I get a lot out of it? And the answer is not exactly. I didn't get what I should have. And because most of the therapists were totally incompetent, in my opinion. But at the same time, the whole process is very narcissistic in its own right. Okay, the whole process is flawed. So what I want to talk about in this video is the question, are all therapists narcissistic? Now, I also want to define here that there's a big difference between being narcissistic and actually having a narcissistic personality disorder. Okay, so I don't actually put a lot of weight on the diagnoses of somebody saying they have a narcissistic personality disorder because somebody these therapists have to diagnose that, right? But the fact that they themselves are pretty narcissistic in their own right and the whole thing is flawed, what weight does that really have? So I will go more into stuff like diagnoses in another video. But I just wanted you guys to know that I had at one point decided I was considering going into becoming a therapist myself because I had done so much therapy in my lifetime over several decades worth. And then at some point when I was doing it while I was in college and I was looking for a major and I thought about it. Okay. And then as I needed to take a closer look at it and I talked to some people who were in the field. And, there's some certain things about it that just didn't sit right with me. And I didn't exactly know why, because at the time I was a lot younger and a lot less seasoned, as you could say. And now that I'm away from it, and I've been away from it for quite a while, I look at things differently in terms of how I was treated, what the whole process is to become a therapist, and how it kind of traps the people who get into it as therapists and how they kind of have to toe the line once they're in, because that's their livelihood at that point. Which is another video for another time. But right now, what I'm going to do is talk about this question. Are all therapists narcissistic? And the term narcissistic is not the same thing as having a narcissistic personality disorder. Okay, and the big difference here and why it's important is that narcissistic behavior is a behavior. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have a personality disorder, which is like a pathology, meaning it governs the way that you look at the world and how you deal with people. It's like an underlying program. A narcissistic personality disorder is like an underlying program inside someone who makes them so self-centered that everything stems from that. They can't break away from it because it's pretty much who they are. And you could go into a lot more detail in terms of that. Some people will say they're like a shattered persona and they wear masks. And, at the bottom line, people who have narcissistic personality disorder are incredibly insecure people who have to put masks on to hide who they really are from other people. And at the end of the day, they're not authentic with people, and they're not capable of being authentic. Okay, so I just want to make sure you understand that I'm not saying that there are no therapists who have narcissistic personality disorder. I'm sure there are, and I'm sure I've met many of them. I'm just going to say that the whole therapeutic model is narcissistic, and it came from the mind of a narcissist named Sigmund Freud. He was the father of psychoanalysis. So why would anybody think that anything springing from the brain of a narcissist wouldn't be narcissistic? Okay? Just want to make that clear from the get-go here. Now, people who go into psychotherapy, they are people who are troubled. What they want to do is really they want to study so they can heal themselves. That's why they become therapists, so they can heal themselves. And what they do is they go into it and they end up kind of trying to vicariously heal themselves through their patients without looking at themselves, which is kind of impossible, but typically narcissistic. Because what they do is project their bullshit onto their clients. Okay, and now they may not necessarily come out and say that, but narcissists are seriously delusional people. So they actually can have a conversation with themselves while they're sitting there judging you and projecting their shit onto you, and they think that they're within their right to do that because they're the therapist, right? Okay, so let me go into this. And by the way, I noticed there was a article that came up on what I was looking for was Hottie. When I say Hottie, I mean as in Hottie, H-A-U-T-H-T, haughtiness, meaning somebody looking down on you or thinking they're better than you, and referring to therapists. And I wanted to see if there was any type of articles out there that was addressing this particular topic. And I actually did find one, and this was actually by one of the leading people online nowadays. She wrote a book about narcissistic abuse, and her name is Shahida Arabi, and she does have an MA. She doesn't specify what kind of MA, but this is at Psych Central. She wrote this article regarding recovering from a narcissist, and she says 5 signs of narcissistic therapists, the ultimate covert wolves in sheep's clothing. Okay, now she wrote this article here on March 4th of this year, and I'm pretty sure that my video had come out prior to that. That talked about narcissistic therapists. So I don't know if she saw it or whatever, but that particular video has gotten a lot of views amongst all my other videos. So definitely, there's some people starting to look at that, and I'm very glad that if that video has had gotten some traction, and if you guys decide to share it with other people, please do so, because I think it needs to be talked about. And I want to reaffirm people that, you know what, yeah, your therapist is a freaking narcissist. I didn't go into depth about this particular article. I did read some of the comments, but there was a part down here that says they violate boundaries. There's a big flaw with this article too that's not addressed. Okay. An unethical therapist. Okay, the truth is they're all unethical. But here is the interesting thing that's quoted in here. The therapeutic container is a term that refers to the way the psychotherapy is supposed to be practiced. Okay? That is except in cases of analysis. The therapist should be sitting a reasonable distance away from the patient. There should be no physical contact other than handshake or an occasional unsexual hug. Sessions should last for set periods of time and should occur in the office. There should be no intention to contact with the patient outside of the therapy office. This allows therapy to be contained. Okay? Okay, that's fine. Okay, now this is the thing though, okay, I want to make sure you understand this. It says a therapist must also maintain his or her boundaries at all times. This means that the therapy must be focused at all times on the patient's problems, and not the therapist. Okay, the therapist should not reveal any intimate information about himself or herself to the patient. And the therapist should not engage in any type of business, sexual or social or personal relationship with the patient other than psychotherapy. When a therapist fails to act in the above manner, it is considered to breach boundaries. Now, this is the problem with this whole thing, okay? From two different levels. I'm going to go back to my slide. Are therapists narcissistic? Okay, that dynamic right there talking to you about is that, okay, we always should be focused on the client, and they're not supposed to. That already is a dynamic that's so flawed in that, particularly from a narcissistic abuse perspective, okay, in that what you have is an uneven dynamic, meaning that they can't share with you, okay? And I'm not challenging this premise of that's the way it's supposed to be, okay? Yeah, it is. But the dynamic is flawed because you, as a narcissistic abuse survivor, isn't going to learn how to have an equal relationship with another human being. You basically go there, you lay on the couch or sit in the chair, and you spill your guts to this total stranger who cannot share equally with you. And isn't that kind of the same thing with the narcissist that you just came out of the relationship with? They sit there and they can judge you. You think, oh, they're not judging me. No, they're probably judging you. They're just not telling you that they're judging you. You're the sick one, right? The whole dynamic is sort of, what's the word? It's implied. You're here, I'm the doctor, and you're here because you're sick, right? So you have this person automatically sitting there judging you because, you know what, I'm the doctor, I'm the one with the degree, I'm the expert, and you are coming to me because you're sick. So what happens is you spend you only get 50 minutes or so, or 55 minutes with this person. You sit there and you spill your guts through that whole time. They may tell you or give you some advice. Okay, number one. But the truth is they're not living your life. Their advice probably is particularly if they're younger than you are, maybe the generations, maybe they're millennial, they got their little degree. You can't learn this stuff from a textbook. You know, you can't really learn this stuff. So they're spewing out advice about probably the fact that they're not capable of having any type of healthy relationships themselves. You know, Sigmund Freud, he actually married his clients. He married one of his clients. He had affairs, like Carl Jung did the same thing. They married their clients and then they had affairs with other clients. How is that healthy? And then, of course, then they come up with all these rules and they say, well, you're not supposed to have these, have these boundaries. Okay, I'm going to go into another video shortly after this that talks about why this dynamic is seriously flawed. Okay, so but I don't want to go and have these really long videos that go on and on. So I'm going to be breaking this down into parts. But I just wanted to say that are therapists narcissistic? And the answer is yes, they are. Even though they may not necessarily have a narcissistic personality disorder, the fact that they're entering into this dynamic with you automatically creates that filter that makes it narcissistic. And I will go into it in the next video right after this. But thank you for listening. And please subscribe, because I'm actually going to have a lot more videos coming out about this particular topic. And if you got any questions or comments, please leave them down below. All right, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.